Bonjour et bienvenue dans cette conférence de presse digitale.
Good morning and welcome to this digital conference organized in order to present the project Roof for Silence by Hala Wardé for the Lebanese Pavilion at the Venice International Architecture Biennale 2021. I am Rim Mumtaz, the correspondent of Politico in France. Today we are at the office of Hala Wardé in Paris. Hala is a well-known architect who designed this pavilion that she will be presenting today. A rapid logistic remark. We have several journalists with us today, and this is something we are proud of. Please send your questions by Zoom, be it in English or French, no problem.
Je poserai la question, vous pouvez l'envoyer en français ou en anglais, il n'y a pas de souci. On va commencer par
First, we will give the floor to the ambassador of Lebanon in France, Excellency Rami Adwan. I give you the floor.
Votre Excellence Rami Adwan, à vous la parole.
Bonjour, merci. Je commencerai par un petit mot en arabe.
Good morning, thank you. I will start with a brief word in Arabic and then I will switch to French. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the press conference dedicated to introducing the Lebanese Pavilion of the International Architecture Biennale of Venice 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm both happy and honored to participate to this press conference for the presentation of the Lebanese Pavilion at the 17th Architecture Biennale of Venice.
Dont la curatrice est l'architecte Hala Wardé et qu'elle a savamment intitulé
That will be entitled A Roof for Silence.
Le silence.
Silence. Hala Wardé wanted silence to be the extraordinary sign that will mark the Lebanese pavilion, especially after all the events that occurred last year, namely the tragedy of the Beirut port explosion. This is the translation of the image of Lebanon and its diplomacy that will translate our traditions, our belonging, and our will to be open to the world. This is a project that answers the most urgent questions in Lebanon, this country that is rich in several types of diversity. How will we live together? We will live together through architecture, be it in its traditional aspect or its modern aspect. And this is what the Lebanese pavilion will be celebrating through poetry, painting, and namely architecture. This architecture that is a source of inspiration for Lebanon and its diplomacy, that will act as an element of peace and unity. We need to be powerful as the olive tree that is the central element of this project. This is a mythical tree that represents sharing and richness. This is what this project calls us to do. It calls us to unite. The Millennium Olive Tree is added to the singular beauty of Lebanon and becomes a sign of humanity that is at the core of Lebanon. We live together in building, in going forward. We live together in Lebanon because Lebanon is a promise of modernity. Thanks to the contributions of our women, of our artists, and of our diaspora, we live this dream of moving forward. We live the dream of this miracle that became possible through the tenacity and courage of Hala Wardé. And we are putting our finger today on what is the most important for Lebanon. Thank you and welcome to the Lebanese Pavilion. Thank you very much, Excellency Ambassador. The Commissioner of the Lebanese Pavilion, Mr. Jacques Tabet, head of the Syndicate of Architecture, I give you the floor. I'm very happy to be with you today to participate to this press conference dedicated to the Lebanese Pavilion in the Venice Architecture Biennale 2021. This day is the outcome of a long journey marked by paradox and uncertainty. To the extent that I can say without exaggeration that it is truly a miracle for us to arrive to where we are now. Everything started in August 2019 when I met the Lebanese Minister of Culture to propose a transparent and sustainable system for the organization of the participation of Lebanon to the Architecture Biennale of Venice. Lebanon had already participated for the first time in 2018, although it was back then the fruit of an individual participation. As president of the Syndicate of Engineers and Architects, I was nominated ex officio commissioner of the Lebanese Pavilion, and I was charged with the responsibility of organizing the participation to the project that will represent Lebanon in the Biennale and to develop the relevant logistic details. On August 27, 2019, it was the day that marked the launching at the headquarters of the Syndicate, context of ideas for the selection of the project in the presence of Hashim Sarkis. After examining the 32 submitted projects, the jury selected 10 for the first round, and the participants were asked to submit their projects during a public audition. This process led in October 16, 2019 to the selection of the project selected by Hala Wardé, A Roof for Silence. 3 days later, on October 19, 2019, tens of thousands of Lebanese citizens took down the streets to denunciate the negligence of the Lebanese political class, therefore announcing the beginning of a crisis that would lead the country to the edge of the abyss. With the uprising of the Lebanese youth across the country, the theme of the Biennale, How Will We Live Together, took a new meaning. The metaphor of the roof, which shelters everybody while avoiding that the expression of the plurality of belongings lead to cacophony, became more and more relevant. But the crisis that hit Lebanon with the control of capital and the constraints imposed on currency withdrawals in banks made the execution of the project an unreliable mission. The pandemic added another layer of complication on this journey, and the postponement of the Biennale inauguration until August 2020 and then May 2021 added a lot of uncertainty regarding the feasibility of the project. And then the terrible explosion of August 4 hit the devastated Lebanese capital and nearly ended the project. It took the incredible energy of Hala Wardé, her flawless tenacity, and her obstination to keep going against all odds to make it possible for us to see today a project that very few were still believing in. During one of our discussions in Paris last November, when I asked Hala if it was still worth the effort, she replied, "Giving up today means betraying the Lebanese youth that mobilized to help rebuild the devastated neighborhoods of the capital and to support the disaster-stricken population." facing the tragedy that caused the death of hundreds of lives and that wounded thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands of persons, we absolutely must claim the right for silence and contemplation under a protective ceiling. As Commissioner of the Lebanese Pavilion in the Architecture Biennale of Venice 2021, I thank Hala for her commitment and determination and invite you all to discover this magical place in the Magazzine del Sale starting May 22nd.
Merci, Monsieur Tabet.
Thank you, Mr. Tabet. The president of the Venice Biennale, Roberto Cicuto, was not able to join us today, but sent us an intervention that I will be reading.
I wish to send my regards to you and all those who have worked to make it possible for the Lebanese Pavilion to welcome us at the 17th International Architecture Exhibition curated by your fellow citizen, Hashim Sakis. I'm pleased to be with you today as you present your remarkable work, just as remarkable as your country, which has reacted in an extraordinary manner to the fiercest challenges of the contemporary world, and which, despite the latest atrocious events which led to death and destruction in the splendid city of Beirut, and the pandemic which has spread across the world, will be present and a protagonist in this Biennale, which opens a year late, but responds forcefully to the question, how will we live together? I am fascinated by Hala Wardé's project for many reasons, because it begins with silence and the void and fosters a dialogue between the different languages of art, inviting us to sit on the roots of olive trees, the universal symbol of resistance, peace, contemplation, and congregation. Welcome all to Venice. Roberto Cicuto. Je voulais aussi juste vous rappeler que vous avez la possibilité de...
I also wanted to remind you that you can ask your questions in the chat of Zoom, the questions that you would like to ask Hala. And finally, I will give the floor to Hala, the curator of the pavilion, the architect Hala, yes, of course. I would like first to thank you. I am deeply moved by what I just heard from His Excellency, the Ambassador, as well as the President of the Biennale and the Commissioner, Jad Tabet. Without the contribution of those persons, the project wouldn't have been able to see the light. I am also very honored and proud to speak about this project that Jad introduced. And without any exaggeration, I would like to say that it is indeed a miracle, especially when we know what happened in Lebanon during the past year. All the tragedies that hit our country. So I am very happy to be able finally to introduce this project and to execute this project. Allow me to seize the opportunity to thank my team as well, because without the members of my team, the architects, and many amongst whom are Lebanese, I wouldn't have been able to have the energy to execute this project, especially since I had several reasons pushing me to let go, but I counted on their energy to be able to move forward. This morning, while coming to office, I thought about a poem from Baudelaire, from Spleen de Paris. So I will speak today about the spleen of Beirut. And the word vivre in French, we have the word ivre, which means drunk. So we needed maybe to be drunk at a certain extent to be able to execute this project, being drunk on culture, namely, and it is through culture that I chose to introduce Lebanon, because There are several ways to present this project, and I didn't know where to start, to tell you the truth, because for me, Lebanon has no beginning nor end. But nevertheless, the theme of the Biennale was living together. And we were planning an exhibition in Venice. This exhibition focusing on the tree, focusing on Lebanon. So I chose to speak about Lebanon through speaking about its culture and speaking about what, for me, represents the essence of Lebanon, the most precious essence of Lebanon. Not only the culture of Lebanon, but also the nature of Lebanon, since we are speaking about olive trees that are part of nature, but that evoke something else as well. So it is an architecture biennale. Therefore, we as architects needed to reflect on the relationship between architecture and other disciplines, be it, for instance, poetry, painting, photography, image, that I will be describing a little bit later on. We also needed to think about void, vacuum in architecture, the need for those spaces dedicated to silence. And I'm speaking about a need here in a general way, because we need such areas in urban zones and public zones and in private zones as well. Lately, during the pandemic, we discovered that those who suffered the most were those who did not have the right to access to the space. And those who truly felt the terrible effect of silence. This is what we definitely need today, a roof for silence, for healing silence. In order to be able to execute this project, I had to collaborate with several persons who are dear to my heart and who inhabit my mind. I spoke about Baudelaire, but I have been also touched by other poets like Etel Adnan, who is a poet, and several other things as well. She spoke about the first sparkle. And as I mentioned, this project is a cyclical project. It is not a linear project that has a clear beginning and a clear end. So it is thanks to the poem of Etal Adnan that I have been able to prepare this project. She had several paintings dedicated to the olive tree, and it is through these paintings that I have thought about the fact that olive trees are very old trees that are more than 2,000 years old trees located in the mountains of Lebanon. And the presence of these 16 trees in the paintings was indeed a sparkle that pushed me to think about void and silence in the context of this project, because it also reflects the silence that we have and enjoy in poetry and in songs. So I have visited those olive trees that are still alive, those 16 olive trees, and I have discovered that they have within their trunk these spaces, and for me it is a true metaphor of the architectural space, because it represents a space for coming together and for reflecting and contemplating. So those spaces could be used either to discuss, to contemplate, and people around these trees that characterize the Mediterranean area remind us of the legend of the Arch of Noah, and evoke as well the a pigeon that held the olive branch to announce the end of the sufferings of the human being. So when I saw these olive trees, I also remembered the work done by a very famous artist who spoke about this question of void, of emptiness, evoking the depths of the field. So I will stop now this description, because we will be able to show you with the additional details the themes that you will be seeing in this exhibition in a PowerPoint presentation. How can we imagine forms that generate spaces for silence and contemplation? How can we create spaces that are sensible for meeting and dialogue? The deflagration. A ceiling for those who lost their ceiling. Silence through their voices. For Virilio, the installation of the exhibition. The paintings. "16 paintings representing this cyclical cycle. Olivea, tribute to the goddess of the olive tree, by Etel Adnan. The pavilion, a space for meeting, a space for refuge, a space for contemplation. Je sais pas ce qui c'est. Je sais pas ce qui c'est. J'ai appuyé sur un mauvais truc. Ah, vous êtes tous connectés.
Voilà, et donc après,
After this video that gave you a good overview of the project, we will move now to a message from Etel Adnan, the famous poet and artist that Hala Wardé mentioned, who gave life to the project through her work as a painter. We will listen to Etel Adnan and then Hala will take us to a tour around the project.
Hala Wardé reprendra pour vous faire visiter ce projet.
On est très fiers.
We are proud to be in Venice. We are very happy to launch this project in a place as important as Venice.
Dans un endroit aussi important.
Since the time when the city was the center of commerce.
Le centre du monde, en étant à la base du commerce de la
When Venice was the center of commerce and trade in the Mediterranean zone. So we are happy and honored to welcome you to Venice. We go back to Venice to celebrate a product that has nothing to do with bombs and weapons. A product through which we heal people. Architecture is a mental education and is at the essence of the human body. The human body is an architecture. Therefore, the idea of architecture is at the essence of reality. This is a very important topic. It is very important for us to be sensitive to architecture. Architecture doesn't mean only houses. It is the structure of our soul. After this very moving intervention from Etel Adnan, I give the floor again to architect Hala Wardé, who will lead us through a tour in this project. Thank you, Reem. So we will show you now a brief PowerPoint presentation, during which I will be speaking about those different images. I am very happy. I don't know if you can already see on the screen the project. So our pavilion is located in the Magazzine del Sale. It is very easily accessible and I am very happy to have been able to find this location at the border of the canal. I think here it is the fifth door that leads to the space. And the lighting is very important in this project and it goes through this door. We have 4 different steps in the context of this exhibition and the central piece is the one you can see here. It is a ring-shaped space that is used to present the work of Etel Adnan. So as you can see, we are next to the water canal, and I have placed this work in a specific location where we will have the reflection of water that comes to hit this piece through silver lightings that I will be speaking about later. Here in red, you will see a small architectural manifest where I speak about this question of silence, of vacuum, of void through the antiforms of Virilio. And then you will have you will be able to see this green reflection of transformation. And then we will have a projection through 3 big screens that will allow us to project a movie that we have prepared, a movie on olive trees that I will be speaking about later on. And finally, the last part of the visit will evolve around this central pavilion. So those are the 4 elements that I will show you very rapidly. This is what you see at the entrance, a representation of photographies. I don't know if I already spoke about this, but it was my first complice. This is when I first visited the olive trees in the region of Bshale in Lebanon. It is a village. We have collected beautiful pictures of those trees under the beautiful light. And here you can see one of the biggest trees. This is its representation in another picture. So this will make you understand why it was a source of inspiration for us, an inspiration about space. So those pictures are the introduction that will allow us to speak about the myth and the legend. After this first stage, I will present the anti-forms of Virilio, who spoke a lot about this theory of silence and void, in order for us to enter in the core of the project, this project that focuses on the depths of space and time. We also have scans of those trees that are a scientific representation of those trees. And we truly see this linkage between the nature and the elements of nature and those artistic translations. I would like to say that I have used this march towards silence to present this glass structure that reminds us of several other elements. Here, for example, the picture from space of the explosion that I cannot talk about because words will never be enough. And this is why we showed the image of this powerful deflagration. It is a scientific picture taken by NASA and highlighting the explosion of Beirut port. So I used it as a fingerprint because you can see it under in black and white. And I have put it within this representation of the anti-forms of Virilio. Therefore, this is the imagination of what remains. So it is a type of progression towards what we have in an intuitive way. And this is what materialized at the end of the day in this image of the olive tree, in the image of its trunk. So this concretely translates into this geometrical form, an octagon, because the paintings at the beginning allowed me to imagine this space within this octagon, and within it we have a ring-shaped structure. Therefore, this piece for me is governed by a ring-shaped ceiling that we will be seeing later on. So in this brief video, I've asked Alain Decher, with whom I have collaborated several times, to come and film these olive trees in Lebanon. And we have been able to do this before the lockdown of March 2021. And we also had the privilege and luck of filming the olive trees during a storm. So we have been able to take pictures at night and during the day as well. I wanted to show these pictures taken at night in order to be able to erase the context within which those olive trees were, because it was perturbated context. I think that through these images that we have been able to take, we can see sonar composition that will be presented at the occasion of this movie. So you can see on the screen parts of this movie where you can see and feel the elements. You can feel the wind, you can feel the rain and hear them as well. So those are extracts from the soundtrack. And this is very interesting because I was trying to see how to translate this soundtrack that was prepared. And this is how we have translated them through shapes of rings, circles. The vitrine I spoke about is formed of glass. Glass from different structures. So it represents this metallic body that you see at the end of the space, and that reflects the natural lighting at specific points. And this is exactly how I see the olive tree, especially when it is by the sea, with the reflection of the seawater on it. As I said, it is a cylindrical shape because the external space is without any limit, and through which you can see those 16 representations. And here I would like to show you or offer you some of them. So after a long path in black and white, we reach color. And this is how we leave the pavilion. I present you the book that will also be published and that will be available. It is about this project, A Roof for Silence, and we will also be able to publish the first album of this musical composition entitled Falling into Time. And I will say the title of the movie is Olivier du Temps. We will also have a publication about the Virilio thinking or theory, evoking our project in Venice.
Last but not least, this is a project that does not represent the first port of this project, because we have a biggest ambition. We wanted to move around the globe after Venice and reach several destinations, from Venice to Beirut, of course. Hopefully, it will be presented in the National Museum of Beirut, and later on the Palace of Tokyo, hopefully, as well as other destinations, in order to carry the message of Lebanon. So I hope that this project will become the cultural ambassador of our country around the world. Thank you so much, Hala, for this guided tour. We have the first question sent by Christian Tawil from Deco Magazine. It says that it is a great path of resilience. So the question is, do you truly think that the work of an architect can lead to a resurrection? Or do you have another message to convey through this architectural masterpiece that is very particular and reflects the history of Lebanon? Architects are the persons in charge of construction and who also go beyond construction. Although I wouldn't speak about resurrection, but it is true that architecture leads to the magical feeling of reviving a place. So I hope that this work will truly translate the presence of different talents. When we heard you explaining about the elements, we finally noticed that we have three components, the darkness, the silence, and the lighting. And I think that this reminds us of the Beirut explosion. Although you don't focus your project on the explosion itself, but you definitely mention it and feel it in this project. So why did you start with those three components, silence, lighting, and void? Because lighting is at the essence of architecture, and void is not present unless through what is around it. So I think that in this project, I prefer to think about the densification through void. And the explosion, of course, we need to speak about it, but it is difficult to do so through words, because no words can describe it and describe its atrocity. And I don't just mention it briefly, but it is present in the spirit and soul of the project. Another question was sent from a journalist.
Become a permanent installation on Beirut's Green Line. Is this true, and in what format?
Alors, c'est effectivement le projet que j'ai présenté au moment du concours.
This is the project that I have presented during the contest. I wanted to be a permanent structure that will be established in a very symbolic space in the town of Beirut. So it was indeed a proposal, but it transformed into a utopic project. Maybe one day it will happen, but for now,
It will be a nomad project that will travel the world.
Donc, qu'est-ce que vous aimeriez, enfin, cette œuvre architecturale que vous avez conçue, que vous allez bâtir,
This project, this architectural project that you have developed, with what do you want it to be associated in the spirit of the persons who will go to visit it physically, if the conditions will allow for a physical visit, hopefully. I wanted to speak about the spaces for silence in the city. When we are within the city, we feel the need to find ourselves in a space that allows us to breathe, that allows us to think, that allows us to move away from the intensity of noise. So I just want to transform this place into a symbol, not only an architectural space, but a symbol of this place that we would like and love to visit, and that will lead us towards art at the end of the day. Thank you very much. I don't think if you have additional questions, I will give you the last minute to write it in the chat. And we are sorry for the technical error that occurred while presenting the video. Unfortunately, the music was not well heard. Therefore, you will be able to see it again in this Zoom meeting for you to be able to watch it again with the soundtrack. I forgot to mention something. I would like to speak about it because we mentioned the August 4 explosion in Beirut. All my colleagues, architects in Beirut, have been mobilized to rebuild the city. So this is very important. The role of architects is extremely important, and we will work together in order to convey this message from Venice to highlight all these beautiful initiatives that were launched in Beirut through the participation of several organizations that mobilized to rebuild the city. Yes, because we need to speak about the question of heritage, the cultural heritage that was endangered and that was destroyed in Beirut. So hopefully we will be able to visit physically this pavilion in Venice. I would like to thank all the persons who contributed to this project, especially Mrs. Hala Wardé. Thank you very much and see you soon.